I always thought I knew my daughter better than anyone else in the world, but the phone call that shattered my life proved just how wrong a parent can be. My name is Mark Anderson, and I'm 46 years old. I've been teaching high school English in Springfield, Illinois for the past 22 years. When people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them I shape young minds. But honestly, most days I feel like I'm just trying to keep 17-year-olds awake long enough to appreciate Shakespeare. I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic with coffee stains on the passenger seat and a collection of red pens scattered across the dashboard. My wife, Sarah, died in a car accident 8 years ago, leaving me to raise our daughter Lisa on my own. Lisa is everything to me. She's 20 years old now, with her mother's bright green eyes and stubborn streak that could move mountains. After Sarah passed away, Lisa and I became a team. We had our Friday night pizza traditions, our Sunday morning pancake rituals, and our late night conversations about everything from college applications to her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. She was the kind of daughter who still hugged me goodbye when I dropped her off at school, even as a senior in high school. The kind who called me dad instead of the more distant father that some of her friends used. Our house is a modest two-story colonial on Maple Street with a front porch that Sarah painted yellow the summer before she died. I've never had the heart to repaint it, even though the color has faded and chipped over the years. Inside, family photos line the hallway leading to the kitchen. There's Lisa, at 5 years old, missing her 2 front teeth and grinning at her first day of kindergarten. Lisa, at 12, holding up a trophy from her middle school science fair. Lisa, at 18, wearing her graduation cap and gown, standing next to me in front of that yellow porch. Money has always been tight on a teacher's salary, especially after Sarah's medical bills and funeral expenses. I drive the same car I bought 12 years ago. I shop with coupons and buy generic brands at the grocery store. My idea of a fancy dinner is take-out Chinese food instead of frozen pizza. But I've never complained, because every sacrifice I made was for Lisa's future. I wanted her to have opportunities that I never had, growing up as the son of a factory worker and a checkout clerk. When Lisa got accepted to State University 3 hours away, I cried happy tears in the parking lot of the post office where I'd gone to mail some bills. She was going to be the first person in our family to graduate from college. She was going to study pre-veterinary medicine and fulfill her dream of helping animals. The tuition was steep, $38,000 a year, but I'd been saving since she was 12. I had a college fund, some money from Sarah's life insurance policy, and I was prepared to take out loans for whatever we couldn't cover. The night before she left for college, we sat on the front porch eating ice cream straight from the container. "I'm scared, Dad," she told me, her spoon making little circles in the chocolate chip. "What if I'm not smart enough? What if I can't keep up with all the pre-med students who went to fancy private schools?" I put my arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Lisa, you're the smartest person I know. You've got your mother's brains and her determination. You're going to do amazing things." She leaned into me the way she used to when she was little and had nightmares about monsters under her bed. "Besides," I added, trying to lighten the mood, "if veterinary school doesn't work out, you can always come back and help me grade papers. I pay in pizza and terrible jokes." She laughed and nudged me with her elbow. "That's the worst backup plan ever, Dad." For the first semester, everything seemed perfect. Lisa called me every Tuesday and Friday evening, right after dinner. She told me about her biology classes, her roommate who was from California and had never seen snow, and the study groups she'd joined. She sounded happy and confident, everything I'd hoped for. Her grades were good, mostly A's and B's, which she'd scan and email to me with little smiley faces drawn in the margins. During Christmas break, she came home for 3 weeks. She looked healthy and relaxed, maybe even a little more mature. She helped me decorate our small Christmas tree with the same ornaments we'd been using since she was 5. She made hot chocolate the way Sarah used to, with mini marshmallows and a dash of cinnamon. We watched old movies and played board games, and it felt like the perfect family Christmas, despite there being only 2 of us. "How's the pre-vet program treating you?" I asked one evening as we sat by our little fireplace, drinking cocoa and watching snow fall outside the window. "It's challenging, but I love it," she said without hesitation. "My organic chemistry professor is incredible. She makes these complex reactions seem so simple, and I've been volunteering at the campus veterinary clinic. Last week, I got to help with a surgery on a golden retriever who'd swallowed a tennis ball. I smiled, watching her eyes light up as she talked about her studies. This was everything I'd worked for, everything Sarah and I had dreamed about during those long nights when Lisa was little, and we'd plan her future while she slept peacefully in her crib. Spring semester started smoothly. The Tuesday and Friday phone calls continued like clockwork. Lisa told me about her advanced biology course, about joining the Pre-Veterinary Student Association, and about a boy named Jake who was also studying animal science. "He's really nice, Dad. You'd like him. He wants to work with large animals, maybe on a ranch somewhere." I teased her gently about having a boyfriend, but secretly, I was thrilled that she was building a life for herself, making friends and connections that would serve her well in her future career. She sent me a few photos of campus events. There was one of her and her roommate at a basketball game, both wearing university sweatshirts and face paint in the school colors. Another showed her in a lab coat, standing next to what looked like a microscope. But sometime in April, I started noticing small changes. The phone calls became a little shorter. When I asked specific questions about her classes, her answers seemed vaguer than usual. "Oh, just the usual stuff, Dad. Lots of studying." Where she used to give me detailed stories about her professors and classmates, now she'd just say everything was fine or going well. I told myself it was normal. She was growing up, becoming more independent. Maybe she was just busy with end-of-semester projects and finals. Maybe she didn't want to worry me with the stress of difficult coursework. I was probably being an overprotective single father, reading too much into perfectly normal changes. In May, she came home for summer break. But something was different. She seemed nervous, almost jumpy. When the phone rang, she'd answer it quickly and take the call in her room with the door closed. When I asked about her summer plans, whether she was going to work at the local veterinary clinic like we discussed, she was evasive. "I might just take some time to relax, Dad. College is really demanding. I think I need a break." I was a little disappointed. I'd been hoping she'd get some practical experience in her field over the summer, but I understood that she'd been working hard, and everyone deserves a break. I didn't push the issue. Throughout the summer, Lisa seemed restless. She'd sleep until noon, then spend hours on her phone or laptop. When I suggested we do some of our old activities together, like hiking or going to the movies, she'd often decline. "I'm just tired, Dad. Maybe tomorrow." Tomorrow rarely came. I started to worry that something was wrong. Was she depressed? Was college more stressful than she was letting on? Was she having problems with her boyfriend Jake? One evening in July, I sat down next to her on the couch where she was scrolling through her phone. Lisa, honey, is everything okay? You seem different since you came home. She looked up from her phone, and for just a second, I saw something in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? But then she smiled that same smile she'd been giving me since she was 5 years old. I'm fine, Dad. Just adjusting to being home. College changes you, you know? I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So I did. August came, and it was time for her to go back to school for her sophomore year. I'd scraped together another year's worth of tuition, borrowing against my retirement fund and taking out an additional loan. The financial strain was getting heavier, but I reminded myself that it was an investment in Lisa's future. In 2 more years, she'd graduate and start veterinary school, and eventually she'd have a career that would make all these sacrifices worthwhile. The morning I drove her back to campus, she was quieter than usual. I attributed it to end of summer sadness, that bittersweet feeling of leaving home again. When we pulled up to her dormitory, she hugged me tightly in the parking lot. I love you, Dad. You know that, right? No matter what happens, I love you so much. It struck me as an odd thing to say, but I hugged her back and told her I loved her too. Call me Tuesday, I reminded her as I got back in my Honda. She waved from the steps of her dorm until I turned the corner and couldn't see her anymore. The first Tuesday call never came. When Friday arrived without any contact from Lisa, I started to worry. I called her cell phone and got her voicemail. Hey, it's Lisa. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. Her voice sounded so young and cheerful on the recording, nothing like the subdued daughter who'd barely spoken during the drive back to campus. I left a message trying to keep my tone light. Hi, sweetheart. Just checking in. I know you're probably busy getting settled in for the new semester. Call me when you get a chance. Love you. She didn't call back. By the following Tuesday, I was genuinely concerned. I called the main number for her dormitory and asked to be connected to her room. The phone rang and rang with no answer. I called her cell phone again and left another message. This one, a little more urgent. Lisa, it's Dad again. I'm starting to worry. Please call me back, even if it's just for a minute to let me know you're okay. Wednesday came and went. Thursday, Friday, still nothing. That weekend, I drove the 3 hours to State University. I told myself I was being an overprotective father, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The campus was beautiful in early September, with students walking between classes and sitting on benches under the old oak trees. I found Lisa's dormitory and went to the front desk. I'm looking for my daughter, Lisa Anderson. She's a sophomore here. Room 314. The student worker at the desk, a girl who couldn't have been much older than Lisa, looked confused. She typed something into her computer, frowned, and typed some more. I'm sorry, sir. I don't show a Lisa Anderson assigned to room 314 this semester. Are you sure you have the right room number? My stomach dropped, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe there was a room change. Can you check if she's assigned anywhere else in this building? More typing, more frowning. I'm not showing a Lisa Anderson in this dormitory at all for the fall semester. Maybe she transferred to a different dorm? I thanked the girl and walked outside, my hands shaking as I dialed Lisa's cell phone again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. The cheerful recording of her voice now sounded like it was mocking me. I spent the next 2 hours calling every dormitory on campus. Lisa wasn't registered in any of them. By the time I got back in my car for the drive home, a cold dread had settled in my chest. Where was my daughter? What was going on? The drive home was the longest 3 hours of my life. I tried to think of reasonable explanations. Maybe she'd decided to get an apartment off campus. Maybe there had been some administrative error with her housing assignment. Maybe she was staying with friends temporarily while they sorted out the paperwork. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. When I got home that Sunday night, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my front door. No postmark, no return address, just my name, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. Mr. Anderson, you should call the Dean of Students' office at State University first thing Monday morning. Ask to speak to Dean Roberts. There are some things about your daughter that you need to know. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen, staring at that anonymous note and trying to make sense of what was happening. Who had written this? How did they know where I lived? What did they know about Lisa that I didn't? Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years and dialed the university at exactly 8 o'clock when their offices opened. Dean Roberts' office. This is Margaret speaking. Hi, this is Mark Anderson. I need to speak with Dean Roberts about my daughter, Lisa Anderson. I received a note suggesting I should call. There was a pause. Please hold, Mr. Anderson. I'll see if Dean Roberts is available. The hold music was some kind of classical piece that felt inappropriately cheerful given the circumstances. After what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, a man's voice came on the line. Mr. Anderson? This is Dean Roberts. I understand you're calling about Lisa. Yes, I am. I've been trying to reach her for over a week, and when I went to campus yesterday, they told me she's not registered in any of the dormitories. I'm very confused and very worried. Another pause. Mr. Anderson, I think we need to have a conversation. Are you sitting down? I was standing in my kitchen, pacing back and forth between the refrigerator and the window. I pulled out one of the chairs from our small dining table and sat down heavily. I'm sitting. Mr. Anderson, Lisa is not currently enrolled at State University. She hasn't been enrolled since last December. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt winded, like someone had punched me in the stomach. That can't be right. She was home for Christmas break. She went back in January. She's been calling me twice a week since then. I understand this is difficult to hear, Dean Roberts said gently. But according to our records, Lisa withdrew from all her classes in mid-December of last year. She never registered for spring semester. My mind was reeling. But she's been telling me about her classes, her professors, her grades. She sent me her report card. Mr. Anderson, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Has Lisa had access to your financial information? Credit cards, bank accounts, anything like that? I gave her a debit card connected to my account for emergencies, and she knows my social security number because she needed it for financial aid forms. Why? Because, sir, according to our bursar's office, someone has been making tuition payments in Lisa's name throughout the spring semester and again this fall. Payments for a student who wasn't actually enrolled. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. What are you saying? I'm saying that someone has been stealing from you, Mr. Anderson. Someone has been taking money that you believed was paying for Lisa's education and keeping it for themselves. And given that Lisa had access to your financial information and has been lying to you about her enrollment status, I think we both know who that someone is. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my daughter, about the past 9 months, was crashing down around me. Mr. Anderson, are you still there? How much? I managed to whisper. How much money are we talking about? Between the spring semester tuition, summer session fees, and fall semester tuition, approximately $47,000. $47,000. Nearly my entire annual salary. Money I'd borrowed against my retirement. Money I'd taken out loans for. Money that was supposed to be securing Lisa's future. Mr. Anderson, I'm required to tell you that this constitutes fraud. You may want to consider contacting the police. The police? My daughter, my Lisa, had stolen from me, had lied to me for almost a year, had looked me in the eye every Tuesday and Friday evening, and told me elaborate stories about classes she wasn't taking, professors she'd never met, friends who might not even exist. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the family photos on the refrigerator. Lisa at her high school graduation. Lisa and me at last year's state fair. Lisa wearing the university sweatshirt I'd bought her for Christmas. It was all a lie. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and devastating discoveries. I called my bank and learned that yes, large payments had been made to State University throughout the year, just as Dean Roberts had said. But I also discovered that Lisa had been making cash withdrawals from my account. Small amounts at first, $50 or $100, but they'd gradually increased. In the past month alone, she'd withdrawn over $3,000. I called my credit card company and found that Lisa had been using the emergency card I'd given her to make purchases far beyond any reasonable definition of emergency. Restaurants, clothing stores, even a weekend trip to Chicago that she'd never mentioned to me. As I sat surrounded by bank statements and credit card bills, trying to calculate the full extent of what had been stolen from me, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Lisa's number. For a moment, I considered not answering. What was I supposed to say to her? How do you confront your own child about betraying you so completely? But I needed answers. I needed to understand how the daughter I thought I knew could do this to me. Hello. Hi, Dad. Her voice was small, tentative. I got a weird message on my voicemail from someone in the dean's office. They said you'd been calling and asking questions. Is everything okay? Even now, even after everything I'd learned, she was still trying to lie to me. Lisa, I need you to come home. Right now. Today. Dad, what's wrong? You're scaring me. I think you know what's wrong. My voice was steadier than I felt. I think you've known what was wrong for a very long time. There was silence on the other end of the line. Long, heavy silence that confirmed everything I'd learned from Dean Roberts. Dad, I can explain. Then come home and explain. I'll be waiting. She arrived 4 hours later, pulling into our driveway in a car I'd never seen before. It was a red convertible, maybe 2 years old, with temporary plates in the back window. As she walked up the front steps to our yellow porch, I noticed she was wearing clothes I didn't recognize either. Designer jeans, expensive-looking boots, a leather jacket that probably cost more than I spend on groceries in 2 months. She found me sitting at our kitchen table with the bank statement spread out in front of me. When she saw the papers, her face crumpled and she started to cry. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sit down, Lisa. She took the chair across from me, the same chair she'd sat in for thousands of meals over the years. The same chair where she'd done her homework as a child, where we'd had heart-to-heart conversations about growing up, where she'd told me about her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. I need you to tell me the truth, all of it, starting from the beginning. Through her tears, the real story finally came out. Lisa had been struggling academically her first semester, not just struggling, but failing. She'd been overwhelmed by the workload and intimidated by her classmates who seemed so much more prepared than she was. Instead of coming to me for help, instead of talking to her professors or seeking tutoring, she'd simply stopped going to classes. I was embarrassed, Dad. You were so proud of me, and I didn't want to disappoint you. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could figure out how to catch up. But by the time she realized how far behind she was, it was too late to salvage the semester. She was going to fail out, and she couldn't bear to tell me. So she made a choice that would change both our lives forever. I withdrew from school in December, but I couldn't tell you. You'd worked so hard to pay for my education. You'd sacrificed so much. I thought maybe I could take a semester off, get my head together, and re-enroll for the fall. But you didn't re-enroll for the fall, did you? No. Her voice was barely a whisper. I tried to, but my grades from the fall semester were so bad that they put me on academic suspension. I would have had to wait a whole year before I could reapply. So you decided to keep lying to me instead. I didn't know what else to do. I kept thinking I'd find a way to fix it. Maybe I could go to community college for a year and then transfer back. Maybe I could get a job and pay you back before you found out. But everything just kept getting worse. And the money, Lisa? $47,000? Where did it go? This was where her story became even more devastating. Some of the money had gone to what she called living expenses. She'd rented an apartment near the university campus to maintain the illusion that she was still a student there. She'd bought textbooks she never used and clothes to look the part, but a significant portion of the money had gone to something much worse. I met some people, she said, not meeting my eyes. People who seemed so confident and successful. They told me about investment opportunities. They said I could double or triple the money quickly, and then I could pay you back and still have money left over for school. My heart sank even further. Lisa, please tell me you didn't give money to some kind of scam. They weren't supposed to be scams. They showed me paperwork, official-looking documents. They had offices and business cards. One of them said he was investing in cryptocurrency, and another was buying and selling cars. They seemed so legitimate. How much did you give them? Almost $30,000. I put my head in my hands. Not only had my daughter stolen from me and lied to me for months, but she'd been naive enough to fall for what were obviously con artists targeting young people with access to money. And the rest of it? The car. She gestured toward the driveway where the red convertible was parked. I bought it when one of the investments was supposed to pay out. I thought I'd have plenty of money to pay you back, so I figured I could have one nice thing. And I've been living in the apartment, buying food, trying to figure out what to do. For several minutes, we sat in silence. I looked at my daughter, this young woman I'd raised from birth, who'd been the center of my world for 20 years. She looked so young, sitting there crying, like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared. But she was also a stranger, someone capable of deception and betrayal that I never could have imagined. Lisa, do you understand what you've done to me? Dad, I know I messed up, but no. My voice was firmer than it had been all day. You didn't mess up. You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of deliberate choices over the course of months to steal from me and lie to me. You looked me in the eye twice a week and told me elaborate stories about a life you weren't living and an education you weren't getting. I was going to fix it. I was going to pay you back. With what money, Lisa? You gave $30,000 to criminals. You bought a car you couldn't afford. You've been living in an apartment and spending money on clothes and restaurants while I've been eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner because I was trying to save every penny for your education. This seemed to hit her harder than anything else I'd said. She looked around our modest kitchen, noticing perhaps for the first time the worn linoleum, the appliances I'd been putting off replacing, the generic brands in the pantry. I didn't know you were struggling. Of course you didn't know, because you never asked. You never wondered where the money was coming from or what it was costing me to provide it. You just took it and spent it and lied about it. The conversation continued for another hour, with Lisa tearfully confessing more details about her deception and me trying to process the full scope of what had happened. She'd created fake email accounts to send me forged grade reports. She'd researched actual professors and classes at the university so her stories would sound authentic. She'd even staged some of the photos she'd sent me, borrowing lab coats and props to maintain the illusion. The level of planning and sustained deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a single bad decision. This was months of calculated fraud, carried out against the person who loved her most in the world. What happens now? She asked finally. I'd been asking myself the same question all day. Dean Roberts had suggested I contact the police. Technically, what Lisa had done was a crime. She could be charged with fraud, identity theft, and who knows what else. But she was my daughter, and despite everything, I still loved her. I don't know, I said honestly. I need time to think. Are you going to call the police? I don't know. Are you going to make me move out? I don't know. She started crying again. Dad, I know I don't deserve it, but please, don't give up on me. I know I've ruined everything, but you're all I have. Mom's gone, and you're the only family I have left. This hit me like a physical blow, because it was true. Despite everything she'd done, despite the lies and the theft and the betrayal, she was still all the family I had left too. Sarah was gone, and Lisa was my only child, the only piece of my wife that remained in this world. But I also knew that I couldn't just forgive and forget. What Lisa had done had consequences that would affect both our lives for years to come. The money was gone, probably forever. My retirement fund was depleted. I had loans to pay back for an education that had never happened. And more than the financial damage, there was the emotional devastation of learning that my daughter was capable of such sustained deception. I need you to leave, I said finally. Not permanently, but for now. I need time to think about what comes next, and I can't do that with you here. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Figure it out. You've apparently gotten very good at figuring things out on your own. She left that evening, taking a small suitcase and promising to call me in a few days. I watched from the kitchen window as she drove away in that red convertible, purchased with money stolen from my retirement fund. The next few weeks were the loneliest of my life. I went to work each day and tried to act normal, but inside, I felt hollow. My colleagues noticed that something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to talk about it. How do you explain to people that your daughter, the pride and joy of your life, has betrayed you so completely? I spent evenings researching my legal options and trying to figure out the financial implications of what had happened. The loans I'd taken out for Lisa's non-existent education still had to be repaid. My retirement fund was devastated. At 46 years old, I was starting over financially, and I wouldn't have many years to rebuild before I reached retirement age. Lisa called several times during those weeks, but I wasn't ready to talk to her. I let the calls go to voicemail and listened to her tearful apologies and promises to make things right. But I couldn't see how things could ever be right between us again. Then, 3 weeks after our confrontation, I received another unexpected visitor. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when someone knocked on the front door. Through the window, I could see a police officer standing on my yellow porch. My heart racing, I opened the door. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Officer Martinez with the Springfield Police Department. I need to talk to you about your daughter, Lisa." "What's happened? Is she hurt?" "No, sir, she's not hurt, but she's been arrested." The officer explained that Lisa had been caught trying to cash a forged check at a bank across town. The check was made out to her for $1,500, but it was drawn on an account that didn't exist. When the bank teller became suspicious and called the police, Lisa had tried to run. "She gave us your address as her permanent residence," Officer Martinez said. "She's asking for you to come to the station." I sat in my Honda in the police station parking lot for 10 minutes before I could bring myself to go inside. This was my daughter we were talking about, but she'd become someone I didn't recognize. First the theft and lies about college, and now attempting to cash forged checks. When they brought Lisa out to the small conference room where I was waiting, she looked terrible. Her hair was disheveled, her expensive clothes were wrinkled, and her eyes were red from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Dad, thank you for coming. I was so scared you wouldn't." "I'm here," I said, "but I need to understand what's happening. The officer said you tried to cash a fake check. I was desperate. I've been staying in a motel since I left home, and I ran out of money. I couldn't afford another night, and I didn't know what else to do." "So you decided to commit another crime?" I wasn't thinking clearly. I know it was stupid. I know it was wrong. But I was scared and alone, and I didn't have anywhere else to turn. The police officer who'd brought her out joined us in the conference room. "Mr. Anderson, your daughter is looking at several charges: attempted fraud, forgery, possibly more depending on what else we find when we investigate. But given that this appears to be her first offense, and considering her circumstances, the district attorney might be willing to work out some kind of plea agreement." "What does that mean?" "It means that if she pleads guilty and agrees to certain conditions, she might avoid jail time, community service, restitution, probation, that kind of thing." I looked at Lisa, who was staring at her hands folded on the table. This was not how I'd ever imagined my daughter's life would unfold. 20 years old and facing criminal charges, living in motels, and attempting to cash forged checks. How had we gotten here? "There's something else, though," Officer Martinez continued. "The conditions of any plea agreement would probably include paying back the money she stole from you. All of it. And that would require you to file a formal complaint against her for the original theft." "You mean I'd have to press charges against my own daughter?" "If you want to see any of your money back, yes. The court can order restitution as part of her sentence, but only if you're officially recognized as a victim of her crimes. This was the moment I'd been dreading since the day I learned the truth. I could let Lisa face the consequences of her recent actions without getting involved. But if I wanted any chance of recovering the $47,000 she'd stolen from me, I'd have to formally accuse her of stealing it. I asked for some time to think about it, and they released Lisa on her own recognizance, meaning she could leave the police station, but would have to appear in court the following week. As we walked out to the parking lot together, she looked at me with desperate eyes. "Dad, what are you going to do?" I'd been asking myself the same question for weeks, but now I finally knew the answer. "I'm going to do what I should have done the day I found out what you'd done," I said. "I'm going to hold you accountable for your actions." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm filing a complaint against you for stealing my money. It means you're going to face the full legal consequences of what you've done. And it means that you're going to pay back every penny, even if it takes you the rest of your life." Lisa started crying again. "Dad, please, I'm your daughter." "Yes, you are. And that's exactly why I can't let you get away with this. Here's the thing about parenting that no one tells you when your child is small and sweet and calling you daddy with a lisp. Sometimes loving your child means making decisions that break your own heart. Sometimes protecting them means letting them face consequences that you desperately wish you could shield them from. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more real-life drama like this, consider subscribing. It really helps me share these stories with more people. And trust me, this story gets even more complicated from here. I spent that entire weekend thinking about my decision. I called in sick to work on Monday and drove to the courthouse to file the formal complaint. Standing in line at the clerk's office, surrounded by other people dealing with their own family crises and legal troubles, I felt like I was betraying everything I'd ever believed about being a parent. But I also knew that if I didn't do this, Lisa would never truly understand the magnitude of what she'd done. She'd face a slap on the wrist for the forged check incident and walk away, thinking that she could manipulate and lie her way out of anything. She'd never learn to take responsibility for her actions, and she'd never become the kind of person her mother and I had hoped to raise. The legal process that followed was long and painful. Lisa initially tried to fight the charges, claiming that I'd given her permission to use the money and that it was all a misunderstanding. But when faced with the evidence, the bank records, and the documentation from the university, she eventually agreed to plead guilty to both the theft charges and the attempted fraud. Her sentencing hearing was scheduled for a cold Tuesday morning in February. I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched as my daughter stood before the judge to learn her fate. She'd been required to get a job, and she'd found work at a restaurant across town, serving tables and washing dishes. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater that I recognized from her high school days. The judge sentenced Lisa to 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay full restitution to me and to the bank where she'd attempted to cash the forged check. The total amount was just over $49,000. "Miss Anderson," the judge said, looking down at Lisa from the bench, "I want you to understand something. Your father didn't have to press charges against you. Most parents wouldn't have. But by doing so, he may have saved your life. Because what you were doing, the path you were on, it only leads to more serious crimes and more serious consequences." After the hearing, Lisa and I stood together on the courthouse steps. It was snowing lightly, and the world looked clean and fresh despite everything that had happened between us. Dad, she said quietly, I understand why you did this. I'm not happy about it, but I understand. Good, I replied, because it's going to take you a long time to pay back that money, and I need to know that you're committed to doing it. I am. I've already started. I'm giving you my entire paycheck from the restaurant, minus just enough to pay rent on a small apartment. It's not much, but it's a start. And that's exactly what she did. Every 2 weeks, Lisa would drive to the house and hand me an envelope with her paycheck inside. After rent and basic groceries, she was left with almost nothing, but she never complained. She'd taken a second job cleaning offices at night to earn extra money toward the restitution. It took 4 years. 4 long years of Lisa working 2 jobs, living in a tiny studio apartment, and driving that red convertible until it finally broke down and she had to sell it for parts. 4 years of slowly rebuilding not just the financial damage she'd caused, but the trust between us. The process wasn't easy for either of us. There were times when I wanted to tell her to keep some of the money for herself, to buy new clothes, or take a vacation, or just have a little fun. She was 24 years old and working 70-hour weeks while her former classmates were graduating from college and starting careers. But I also watched her change during those years. The entitled, selfish young woman who'd stolen from me and lied so easily was replaced by someone who understood the value of hard work and honesty. She learned to budget every dollar. She learned that actions have consequences. Most importantly, she learned that the people who love you deserve better than deception and betrayal. About halfway through the 4 years, Lisa came to me with a proposal. Dad, I've been thinking about going back to school. My first instinct was to say absolutely not. She'd proven that she couldn't handle college, and I certainly wasn't going to pay for her to try again. But she held up her hand before I could speak. I want to pay for it myself. Community college first, just part-time while I'm working. I've been researching programs, and I think I want to study business. Maybe accounting or finance. Something practical that will help me earn more money and be better with managing it. I was skeptical, but I also saw something different in her eyes. She wasn't the scared, overwhelmed 18-year-old who'd fled from her problems anymore. She was a young woman who'd faced real consequences and come out stronger. If you can manage it while still paying me back, I won't stop you, I said. But the restitution payments don't change. That comes first. I understand. And she did manage it. She enrolled in 2 classes per semester at the local community college, studying at night after her restaurant shifts and on weekends between her cleaning jobs. Her grades were excellent, mostly A's with an occasional B. But more importantly, she was genuinely engaged with the material in a way she'd never been during her brief time at State University. After 2 years of community college, she transferred to a 4-year university to finish her bachelor's degree in accounting. By this time, she'd been promoted to assistant manager at the restaurant and had started her own small bookkeeping business on the side, helping other small business owners with their financial records. The day Lisa made her final restitution payment to me, she was 26 years old. She'd graduated from college with honors, landed a job at a respected accounting firm, and was engaged to David, a man she'd met in one of her business classes. David knew the whole story of what had happened between us, and rather than running away, he'd admired Lisa's determination to make things right. We met at our usual spot. the kitchen table, where so many important conversations had taken place over the years. Lisa handed me the final envelope, which contained not just the last payment she owed me, but an extra $500. "What's this for?" I asked, looking at the additional money. "Interest," she said. "I know you never asked for it, but I've calculated what that money would have earned in your retirement account over the past 4 years. This is the interest you lost because of what I did." I stared at the money for a long moment, then pushed it back across the table to her. "Keep it. Use it for your wedding, or your honeymoon, or whatever makes you happy. You've paid your debt, Lisa. All of it." We both started crying then, something we hadn't done together since the day she'd confessed everything to me. But these were different tears. Tears of relief and forgiveness and new beginnings. "Dad, I need you to know something," she said through her tears. "What I did to you was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But in a weird way, I'm grateful that you didn't let me get away with it. If you'd just forgiven me and pretended it never happened, I would have learned that I could manipulate people who loved me, and there wouldn't be any real consequences. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do," I admitted. "There were so many nights when I lay awake wondering if I was being too harsh, if I was destroying our relationship forever." "You weren't destroying it. You were saving it, and you were saving me." Today, Lisa is 32 years old. She and David have been married for 6 years and have 2 children, my grandchildren, who call me Grandpa Mark and climb all over me when I visit. Lisa owns her own accounting firm now, specializing in helping small businesses and individuals who've gotten into financial trouble. She speaks at local high schools about making smart financial decisions and taking responsibility for your actions. Our relationship isn't the same as it was before everything happened. How could it be? But in many ways, it's better. It's built on honesty now. Real honesty, not the polite surface-level sharing we used to do. Lisa tells me when she's struggling with something, and I tell her when I'm worried about her. We don't pretend that everything is perfect, because we've learned that perfection is just another kind of lie. The yellow porch is still yellow, though I finally repainted it last spring with Lisa's help. We found the exact same color Sarah had chosen all those years ago. As we worked together, brushing paint onto the old wood, Lisa told me something that I'll never forget. "Mom would have been proud of you, Dad, for not giving up on me, but also for not letting me give up on myself." I think she was right. Sarah always believed that love meant holding people accountable, not enabling their worst behaviors. She would have made the same choice I made, as painful as it was. Looking back now, I realize that the phone call from Dean Roberts wasn't just about discovering Lisa's betrayal. It was about discovering what kind of father I really was when everything was on the line. Would I choose the easy path of forgiveness without consequences? Or would I choose the harder path of love that demands growth and responsibility? I chose the harder path, and it nearly broke both of us. But it also made us both stronger, more honest, and ultimately closer than we'd ever been before. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their self-destruction. Sometimes, protecting someone means letting them face the full weight of their choices. And sometimes, the only way to save a relationship is to be willing to risk losing it completely. The money I lost was significant, and it did set back my retirement plans by several years. But what I gained was something much more valuable: a daughter who understands the difference between right and wrong. who knows that actions have consequences, and who has learned that the people who love you deserve honesty, even when the truth is difficult. If I had to make the same choice again, knowing everything I know now about how painful the process would be, I would make the same decision. Because at the end of the day, my job as Lisa's father wasn't to make her life easy. It was to help her become the kind of person who could face difficulties with integrity and strength. The hardest lessons are often the most important ones. And sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone you care about destroy themselves, even when that refusal breaks your own heart in the process. I still teach high school English, and I still try to shape young minds. But now, I have a different perspective on what that really means. It's not just about teaching them to appreciate literature or write coherent essays. It's about helping them understand that their choices matter, that their actions affect other people, and that becoming a good person sometimes requires making difficult decisions and facing uncomfortable consequences. Every semester, I have students who remind me of Lisa at 18. Overwhelmed and looking for easy ways out of difficult situations. When I see that look in their eyes, the temptation to give up or take shortcuts, I tell them a story. Not the whole story, not all the painful details, but enough to help them understand that the choices they make now will shape who they become later. Some of them listen, some of them don't. But I keep telling the story because I know that somewhere out there is another parent who might have to make the same impossible choice I made. And I want them to know that love sometimes means saying no, even when saying yes would be easier. Lisa and I have talked about writing a book together someday, sharing our story with other families who might be struggling with similar issues. We want parents to know that it's possible to hold your children accountable without destroying your relationship with them. We want young people to understand that the people who love them deserve honesty and respect, and that taking responsibility for your mistakes isn't the end of the world. It's the beginning of becoming a better person. But for now, we're content to live our lives with the hard-won wisdom that sometimes the most painful decisions are the right ones, and that real love isn't about making people happy in the moment. It's about helping them become the best versions of themselves, even when that process is difficult for everyone involved. The yellow porch still welcomes family and friends, but now it also serves as a reminder that even the most faded and damaged things can be restored with enough patience, effort, and love. Just like relationships, just like people, just like the trust between a father and daughter who learned that honesty, however painful, is always better than the most beautiful lie. What would you have done in my situation? When someone you love betrays your trust so completely, do you think forgiveness should come with consequences? Or should love mean accepting them no matter what they've done? Have you ever been in a position where you had to choose between being kind and being truthful with someone you cared about? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your own experiences with difficult family situations. Sometimes sharing these stories helps us all understand that we're not alone in facing impossible choices, and that love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for.